Okay, well, it's time to begin. You guys at home, please send me an email reminding me that you are participating via Zoom. And so a couple of things. First of all, I haven't graded quiz 5 yet. They're still kind of trickling in. There seemed to be some confusion about when they were due or something, but at any rate, they're still trickling in, and I haven't graded your PowerPoints yet, and they have all trickled in, except the last one came yesterday. So anyway, I'll get on it, and I'll have another quiz for you on Wednesday, which will be your final quiz. I'm working on a question, I think that will be answerable and in a kind of a way comprehensive as well. We'd say, good morning. Mark you here. So, we have a couple of areas to look at. Hopefully we'll get through. Hopefully we'll get to the art of the Americas before 1300. And finally, we'll do the art of Africa Wednesday. So with that being said, we actually have a couple of 3 maps here, just saying. And what we'll do is start with Mesoamerica. Meso means middle. And this is the peninsula, the Mexican peninsula that connects North America with South America. And so we're basically talking about a lot of these places in what we call Central America, a lot of good tourist spots here, vacay places on the Yucatan Peninsula and so on. And so that's the first map. The second map is Andean South America. So this is where we'll take a look at Indian cultures. Basically up here, a big general category is Aztec. Big general category is Inca. And then finally, early Native American sites in North America. And we won't talk about everything, but we'll concentrate on the desert Southwest, modern day Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, so on, and the Mississippian cultures, which really run along the Ohio and Mississippi rivers. And if you can see this, let me zoom in on this. Cahokia, that's here, right across the river in Illinois. And so it is the site of perhaps the largest city in the Americas prior to the arrival of Europeans. And so with that being said, I got a video to start with Aztec culture. And let's take a look at this. Make sure I got the right screen share. And that'll skip ads. And let's see. Gotta get some volume. Volume. How do we offer low prices? Volume.
World History Encyclopedia.
Can you guys hear that back there? Okay.
Civilization spanned around 1300 CE. At its greatest extent, meaning let's get into the beginning of what would become one of those times in America. Around 1100, throughout centuries, so Alabama began to compete for regional dominance and resources. Each of these states had its own and made them count. Each of these states
I want to show you something here. I just want to go back just a little bit. It's trying to stop it there. And so collection R. Eugene Gapel from Paris. Just saying, you'll find a lot of the stuff about Mesoamerica in the hands of museums or private collectors. Just saying.
each of these city states is surrounded by this resulted in a number of small empires being formed in Mexico in 1428 to 1008. And several other smaller cities. The alliance of these defeated the Ascot alliances formed between Texcoco and Providence and Mexico. These three cities were expanded and shared spoils of war between them until Tenochtitlan and became a way to hire people and established itself as the capital city of the Aztec. From then, the empire continued to expand and develop, and Tenochtitlan, which today is beneath Mexico City, built a house of 200,000 inhabitants, which made it the largest city in the region. It was both the religious and political capital, as well as the center for trade, which they exported goods like gold, turquoise, cotton, pottery, tools, weapons, foodstuffs, cacao beans, and slaves. The city boasted magnificent architecture and monumental buildings. The central sacred precinct. It was an island city which was uniformly designed with canals and a grid formation which was divided. How did the empire stay together? Well, a number of different factors contributed to the integration of city-states, including intermarriages, gifts, building monuments, and printing artwork to promote the Aztec imperial ideology, and most important, the military intervention. They engaged in warfare to squash rebellions, to acquire territories and resources, and in order to honor their works, not only for victory. Warfare was a fundamental aspect of Aztec culture, and all males were expected. Aztec warriors were trained from a young age to master weapons and tactics. The Aztecs also had warriors known as the Eagle Warriors and the Jackal Warriors, were a part of the military and were prestigious military groups. The Jackal Warriors wore jaguar skins and helmets with canes, whilst the Eagle Warriors were dressed for battle in feathers, complete helmets, and equipment. The social standing was split with the local and servants and by their freedom if they have the means. Religion and mythology of the Aztecs was closely explained as it was in Aztec when mythology explains that the Mexican people migrated from their country to Aztec because of the vision sent to them from Western order deities, with the god of the sun and the war. These vision were making particular practice of going to and explore that earth. That is where they should build their new homes. When they arrived and decided one day we come to Tenochtitlan, they sold the urn and established their city. The gods of the Aztecs were varied and were associated with ideas, concepts, and events that were important to the Aztecs. The gods represented things such as the sun, geographical features, and they were also representations of Aztec such as names. Fundamental part of the Aztec culture, and it's given the Aztecs a commercial legacy, but the sacrifice of important aspect of their religious beliefs, which gave the highest possible honor to the gods, and was regarded as a necessity to ensure prosperity. The sacrifice of humans was seen as a repayment to the gods who sacrificed so much for creating the earth and the sun. So the gods were fed and nourished with the sacrifice of blood and flesh of the humans, and sometimes animals. People were sacrificed in a number of different ways, often depending on what god they were being sacrificed to. Children were going to be sacrificed as well, especially the rain god Tlaloc, in which the tears of the children would regain the favor of the rain. There were also people selected to impersonate God for a period that ended in sacrifice. The god impersonators were some of the most honest sacrificial who would live for 1 year in luxury as the manifestation on earth of the god. Each god impersonator was built an image of the rain, reflecting their respective deity, and works often was the impersonator of Shiva Toto, the secret life, which God known as the raven. On the top of large pyramids, such as at Tenochtitlan, Mexico, sacrifices were most often carried out in sculptured heaps of stone, using an obsidian or knife. The Aztecs were particularly skilled in the art of metalwork, although much of it was melted down to be reused, so very little remained. Small pieces of gold jewelry, such as earrings, necklaces, and rings, would be discovered into only a fraction of what the Aztecs would have created. A better survivor of Aztec artistic skill was their sculpture, often made of wood or stone, and depicting their numerous forms. It was still believed that statues of gods needed to be fed with blood and precious stones. Small sculptures of local gods and agricultural deities have been found, with of these being the upright female figures on the left, first being representations of important aspects of their religion, and second as a way to read them.
Sorry.
Also, military the domineering architecture and imposing frescoes reminded those who had been included by the wealth and power of their empire. Less than 100 years after the Aztec Empire was established, the Tenochtitlan had the whole thing crumbling down in the span of only 3 years. By 1515, there were several bad omens which suggested that there was a rapidly approaching crisis. This was fueled by the sightings of fantastic floating temples on the coast, which signaled the arrival of the Spanish and the Aztec people culture. The expedition, which would eventually march right to Tenochtitlan, was led by the conquistador and architects, brought in 500 soldiers. He led with Tabasco first, and was met with hostilities right away. The fakes were people who were matched with weapons and tactics and strategies. And so Cortez was presented with some slave girls as reconciliation. And one of these girls, known as the Cortez sailed north and landed near the town of Tijuana. At this point, yes, second. What rose a violent group who was is sent the invaders in the sea, and all this is given by the sun. This probably just made Spanish even more keen to put and August of 1519, Cortez marched to Tenochtitlan. Within 2 weeks of Cortez meeting the Aztec king, cordiality between the two turned south. We only have Spanish texts to go on, which were undoubtedly biased. Moctezuma II as such a passive leader. That Moctezuma II reverently believed that Cortez was a returning god Quetzalcoatl of Aztec mythology had been rejected by modern scholars. Either way, Moctezuma II was taken as hostage and forced to declare himself the subject of Charles V and hand over even more treasure. Since the Aztecs had used brutal force to impose their ideology on the conquered peoples, they racked up quite a large amount of enemies within their own kingdom, especially since many of their sacrifices came from peoples. Aztec warriors weren't too happy with Moctezuma II, and so they overthrew him and sent his brother Cuitlahuac as the new Lactolani or Speak. The Spanish tried to get Moctezuma II to calm him down, but as he was attempting this, according to the Spanish, the people became enraged and began hurling stones at him. From the store of the balcony, he was hit on the head with a rock and died. Indigenous accounts differ and claim the Spanish killed him when he would not comply with their demands. And when he into the street, where it was taken up by the people and buried in the garden. The allies that Cortez had gathered, along with superior weapons such as guns, steel swords, crossbows, fierce war dogs, and cavalry. Entering Tenochtitlan, the Spaniards seized the capital and burned the Templo Mayor to the ground. Cortez locked off Tenochtitlan from the fortresses and introduced a small house to the region, more than 50% of Aztec population. At the 13th of August 1521, the Aztec Empire fell to the Spanish, began enslaving the survivors. Yes, the Aztec civilization lives on. Many Mexicans are descendants of Aztecs. Some still consider themselves Aztecs, and while it's still spoken in some parts of Mexico, Mexican culture is still influenced by the Aztecs. The modern Dia de los Muertos, or Day of the Dead, combines Aztec and Catholic traditions, and much Mexican food speaks itself to the Aztecs. The Aztecs are considered one of the greatest world empires. Let us know what you think down in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on the new videos every Tuesday and Friday. Yes,
So I'm gonna get back to this. So I showed you that this was kind of a whirlwind tour of the Americas, and it had a lot of important information. There were a few things that, to my mind, should have been fleshed out a little more. First of all, we talked about Hernan Cortez, and he was the Spanish conquistador who basically took down the Aztec Empire. And as the narrator said, there are differing accounts of exactly what happened. But suffice it to say that the Spaniards, after Columbus had sort of stumbled upon the New World, the Portuguese and the Spaniards sent people over to the New World in search of gold. And they try to convert all of the indigenous people to Christianity. That's like a big thing. All of the drawings you saw are, some are in the library in Mexico City, some are in private collections, but those drawings were not really Aztec drawings. Those were drawings made by the Spaniards. And in fact, when Cortez came into what is now modern day Mexico, they brought not only soldiers and horses, but they brought a few scholars along the way. And so they were very interested in depicting the cultures. And I say cultures because there are many cultures in this part of the world. And to document who they were and their belief systems, their language, and so on. As a matter of fact, in this part of southern Mexico and what we call Central America, they were basically over 14 different languages. And basically, you can kind of divide these up into 3 groups, as the film said: Aztec, and that's kind of the blanket overall. But you know, you have other cultures like Olmec and the Mayan and the Toltec, etc. So, and I wanted to point this out too. How many of you, this is like totally off the wall, you don't know this? That's okay, so I won't test you on it. How many of you know the Marines, the song for the United States Marines? Yes. Do you know what the words are? The first line. From the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli. I wasn't a Marine, by the way. I just know that. I grew up in a military culture called the United States. Bottom line, we have since changed how.
Wait,
Yes.
is it that the song you just sang? What was that? Because I think I remember like hearing it somewhere. Is that part of the like old German national anthem?
No, it's part of the Marines anthem.
Yeah, because I think it's like, I don't know. There's a similar line in like the band German national anthem too, that
Yeah.
talks about a place like this. I don't know, but I don't think
Basically,
Montezuma,
you're
but it must have been
right.
somewhere else.
A lot of these songs, they share a lot of rhythm patterns and rhyme schemes in a way that makes them identifiable as an anthem. And so you're absolutely right. The Marines anthem, they talk about the halls of Montezuma, and we saw in the film here Montezuma, which is the more correct pronunciation. For a long time, it was Montezuma. They just kind of slid right over. Anyway, the halls of Montezuma refers to the United States Marine Corps during the war with Mexico and sending a bunch of Marines there to take down the Mexican government in Mexico City. And Mexico City is really built right on the capital of the Aztec Empire. Today, you can find this all over the place. They are very interested in recovering as much of the Aztec civilization as possible. Problem is, like a lot of cultures, they just built right over the top. So they have to dig down and excavate. Another problem they have too is that what the Aztecs did was reclaim parts of wetlands to build their city on. And so you get down so far, floods out too. So it's really quite complicated. And as the narrator said, Mexican people are very interested in returning to the Aztec culture. They see that as a national heritage. And so anyway, bottom line, they talked about in the book too, about how we think there was a land bridge from Siberia to modern day Alaska that was available 13,000 BCE or so. And that's where the people from Asia migrated into the Americas. I was looking for some other evidence because DNA analysis is starting to point towards the possibility that there were other people here before what we now know as Native Americans. Research goes on. And so anyway, the Aztecs, they built these, this is in Chichen, and I'm gonna see if I get a better, I don't have a better slide. This is a Mayan temple. And it has, this is a really interesting thing. I don't know if you guys remember, but about 8 or 10 years ago, they talked about the Mayan calendar predicted the end of the world. Remember that? Yeah, good. So I'm not crazy. It really did happen. Thank you. Bottom line is that the Mayans developed a very precise calendar. They were very adept at mathematics and astronomy. And the idea of the world ending, what was it, 2012 or something like that, was the last day on the Mayan calendar. And so anyway, long story short, the world did not end. Second thing is that subsequently we figured out that that's only as far as they had projected with their calendar. They only went like 400 years ahead when they put this together. But everything was based on that. This pyramid at Chichen has 4 stairwells, one on each side, and each of those stairwells has 365 steps. Amazing, because that's how many days there are in a year. Actually, the building itself is something of a calendar. And what happens actually when we have the winter solstice and the summer solstice, which means that this is very much right in line. The sun rises in due east and sets in due west. And on those 2 days of the year, it casts a shadow on the northern face that looks like a serpent. Don't ask me how they did it, but that was the degree of mathematical precision and knowledge of astronomy that they had. And so it has the largest ball court in the New World. I'm gonna see if I can zoom in on this. Hopefully you'll be able to see it. It's right here. It's very hard to see. You'll have to trust me on this. Spaniards, when they arrived, they found these cultures, and they were highly developed cultures, and they kind of, like I said, they documented a lot of what they did, their way of life and their languages and stuff. They had this game, and it had a little round hoop. It was kind of like basketball, except the hoop was turned sideways. And they had a ball that was made of rubber. Spaniards didn't know anything about rubber. Rubber was something that comes from the Amazon, rubber trees in tropical countries. Now, there are a lot of places grow rubber trees, but bottom line, it was native to the Amazon, and it was this bouncy rubber. So anyway, this rubber ball, and they would have two players, and the first one to get that ball through that little hoop, which is way up high, it looks like probably 20 feet or so, and you can't use your hands. It's like soccer. You can use your elbows and feet. Anyway, very difficult game. They documented that some of these games will go on for days. And somehow these games were connected to human sacrifice. And that is one thing that is pretty much constant through all of these cultures is human sacrifice and slavery. And so it says important rituals that often ended in the death of captured enemies. So if that's what I'm talking about, human sacrifice. And so this is an Olmec head. You can see this is really pretty old. It's, almost 3,000 years old. And we have other gigantic heads like this, and they sort of show up in different places in the world. In Benin, West Central Africa, we see the Benin heads and their gigantic, large heads. We see Easter Island off of the Chilean coast in the middle of the Pacific. Easter Island, large human heads. That's kind of a thing we still don't know exactly what this is all about. But talking about this just in terms of artistic skill, these are actually pretty interesting. This is 9 feet 4 inches high, so this is not a small project. And the facial expressions and the facial characteristics differ from one to the next. And so it's given scholars the idea that these might actually be depictions of real people. We don't know for sure. And we think they were probably rulers, not gods. And so ceremonial acts in the form of a maize god. Maize, that's the word for corn. And they had gods like in other places in the world that kind of governed or watched over various aspects of culture. They had rain gods and maize gods to make sure the crops come out as a staple of their economy and their diet. And so again, very expressive. And this is a ceremonial acts. We don't really know what that's for, but it may have played a part in human sacrifice. That's what the ceremonial are. A seated figure with drinking cup. And this is all from Mesoamerica. And you can see they're really kind of inventive. Their work sort of stands alone in world culture because what they do, you can find some resemblance in some of the ancient cultures, especially of Egypt, which a lot of scholars jump to that conclusion early on, but these are very different in a lot of significant ways. And so aerial view, Teotihuacan, pyramid, pyramid of the moon, pyramid of the sun. And again, all connected by the Avenue of the Dead. One of the things that they pointed out in the film was that a lot of things that have evolved as aspects of Mexican culture are really a blend of Aztec culture and Spanish culture. And this Avenue of the Dead, that's what she was talking about, like the Day of the Dead that we celebrate in Mexican culture. You guys may have seen that when people dress and they look with masks that look like skulls and so on. Another pyramid, there's a pyramid of sun, and that would be this one. And Temple of the Feathered Serpent, excuse me. And so anyway, what we have left are many of the temples. And I think that a lot of focus is placed on these cultures. And I think in part because they constructed monumental buildings. And that's always something that attracts attention when you have these large scale projects that the culture undertook, whether it's the pyramids in Egypt, the Parthenon, the temples in Mesopotamia, the stupas at other places in India. The terracotta armies, so in China. And so anyway, this is a picture of a goddess. One of the interesting aspects of this group of cultures is that we do find a lot of depictions of what we call elite women. We don't know if they are goddesses or queens or exactly what their position is. This is called a goddess. And so priest performing a bloodletting rite. I want to move up to something here that I thought was really, oh, here we go. Presentations of captains to Lord Chan Muwan, room 2, structure 1. Painting. And this depicts some of the human sacrifice. And one of the issues here, you can see a lot of the blood. One of the things that based on their own artwork that they did with their human sacrifices is they cut off their hands first. You can take a look at those pictures and see they are bleeding from their arms and they have no hands. And that is, at least supposedly, so the slaves could not get away. They had no way to fight back, so to speak. And here they are, and there's the bloodletting. Oh, and this is a figure of that ball player that I was talking about with the hoop, with the ball game that we find in Mayan and Aztec cultures. And this is what we figure, this is how they dressed. And they had all of this large belt and these other sorts of padding. Probably that would be fair to say that if you had this around your arm, you could use your arm like a bat to hit the ball, and you could have the ball bounce off this breastplate and so on. And so I got a short video here. And these are actual Aztec,
These
Inca,
were texts
Mayan.
with magical power, descriptions of their cosmos, chronicles of their dreams. Beautiful, fragile documents, they were a truly remarkable achievement. A unique, totally original written language, as momentous as the hieroglyphs of ancient Egypt. They bear witness to the birth of the first written language. The importance of these texts was recognized by the first European invaders centuries ago. In 1562, a devout Catholic priest named Diego de Landa convinced one of the last surviving Maya scribes to translate the Spanish alphabet into Maya. Landa fervently wanted to bring Christianity to the Maya. He felt learning the language was his best hope of reaching the people he yearned to convert. Landa dedicated his life to understanding the Maya and to saving their souls. Still, his memory is not revered. Rather, it is forgotten.
Wanda was distraught, I think, maybe even destroyed, when he discovered that people that he believed had been converted to Christianity. He found them continuing to practice pagan practices. He lost it. He went absolutely crazy, and he began to try to extirpate any remnants of ancient religion.
In a single night, this man burned hundreds of precious books, books containing their science, their literature, the record of their lives. As the mind
Well,
Quality writing makes your schoolwork better.
come on, guys. Share screen. So anyway. I gotta move this to get to that. My apologies. I won't give me that. Okay, make sure I can see this. You can see that at home. Good. Sorry about that. This thing is really baffling. That's part of the problem. What Diego de Landa did, started off trying to translate and preserve the culture, got crazy, burned much of what they had, their literature, their science, their astronomy, and so on. And so anyway, this is Mesoamerica. We move here to, there's another ball court there, and another temple. Did you see, this is kind of a theme here. Temple of the inscriptions. You can see the scale. Monumental buildings. lid of the sarcophagus of Janab Pakal, Lord Pakal. And I want to kind of elaborate on this just a little bit. One of the things that I think is pretty interesting is that they did treat the leaders, the royalty, in a way that's very similar to what we've seen in European art with the sarcophagus. And they would have it highly decorated and telling the story of a person's life. One of the things that I was reading about too, they talked about this idea of a tree connecting heaven and earth, and they call that the axis mundi. Mundi means earth. Telemundo, broadcast all over the world. It's the same root word. It's out of the Latin. Bottom line is that that's not unlike what we've seen in other religions around the world, belief systems, and you have something, whether it's man-made, like a spire or a minaret or the Tower of Babel, as written in the Bible, a pagoda that reaches into the sky, or a tree. The idea of connecting the heavens to the earth seemed to be very widespread. I want to kind of get to, this is all still Mexico. The Toltec, again, large figures, cut out of stone. This is Toltec culture. I was talking about the Olmec heads and Easter Island, and there are similarities here. Of course, these are different, they're unique, but they follow a lot of what happens around the world. And so I want to talk a little bit about this. We're moved down into Peru now, and this is collectively called the Inca culture. And we still have a lot of sites reasonably kind of intact. Most famous, Machu Picchu. And what we have here in the Inca civilization is that it's a little bit different than most of the civilizations that we've studied so far, in that civilizations tend to grow around a water source, namely a river. Mesopotamia grew up between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers in the Middle East. The Nile, source of water, commerce, everything, ancient Egypt. The Yellow River in China, and so on. And in South America, this is not really the case. And in fact, in Peru and Chile, it's almost as though the Andes Mountains come up almost right out of the Pacific Ocean. There's not really a lot of flat land. The Andes are right there, but the Andes and that western coast of South America has a current, an ocean current that brings from the south warm water, nutrients, minerals. It's like the perfect fishery created by nature. And so these civilizations, for the most part, relied on fishing right there in the ocean. And on the hillsides, there were things that they could grow, cotton, corn, and so on. But bottom line is that the ocean actually served as their life source, their major resource. And so with this is one of the things that we have in terms of artwork that has survived from Inca culture is the textile arts. And this is a camelid fiber with stem stitch embroidery. And this is like, it says a funerary mantle, basically what you wrap a dead body in. But why do we have this? First century come there, things almost 2,000 years old. Why do we still have it? Partly because of the climate that I just described. It's a high up in the mountains, they don't get a lot of rain. Climate's pretty stable. It can preserve a lot of these textiles in a way that you don't really find around the rest of the world, because the rest of the world, you got heat, you got humidity, you got snowfall, you got all kinds of things, all kinds of climatic conditions that will destroy textiles. And so anyway, this is a funerary, and there's another example here too. Lima tapestry, a tunic from Peru, Wari. See, and this is still 1,500 years old or so. And so this, by contrast, has a geometric design. And on the other one, these are actually little people. If you take a close look at this, these are human figures doing different kinds of activities. But it's an insight into their art. Another insight is this. Up high in the mountains, the Nazca people created these images, and they are all over the place. They're called the Nazca lines or the Nazca drawings. And this is an aerial view. And these were not even discovered until the invention of the airplane, where aviators flew over and said, look at this, this is it. And so there are all kinds of images created. This, obviously a hummingbird, but you have all different kinds of animals and different kinds of other figures that may be like ghost-like figures or something. This has spawned an industry of conspiracy theorists, because you can't see this from the ground. Who were they making this for? In fact, I found tons of videos I'm not sharing because they're not scholarly, but there are a lot of videos out there about how these were like landing ports for aliens. It might be, I don't have any evidence. So bottom line is that the accepted rationale for creating these is that they wanted to appease their gods. And doing drawings such as this kind of says a couple of things. First is that they knew math. They knew how to do something to scale on a flat plane, how far over you'd have to go and then make a 90-degree turn and then turn back and then stay quite even. This is like mathematical precision extraordinaire. But the idea of appeasing the gods, as I said earlier, they did have gods, the corn god, or the maize god, I should say, and rain gods. And so these at least in theory, we don't know because so much of their culture got wiped out, but we believe that these were made to please the gods to bring rain. And so how they did it, it says pebbles scrape the side to reveal lighter clay and calcite beneath. So basically what they did was just turn over rocks. And this is a rocky area and they could, that's why they were preserved, because it's a natural coloration that they tapped into. And so Raimonde Stella from Main Temple, like a lot of things, named after the person who discovered it or stole it. And this has a lot of the iconography that you'll see in Inca culture too. One of the interesting things about this, and there were plentiful in the film I showed you, and I didn't want to stop it to point it out, is that snakes are really very common in the artwork, and especially of the Aztec cultures. But if you take a look at the landscape, you'll know why. This place is just full of snakes. It's tropical forest land. And this, we'll talk about finally here, North America. And we have different cultures. As I said earlier, we're going to see a little bit from the Hopi, Navajo, Anasazi cultures, the Mississippian people. And in this case, this is from the cultures of Alaska, the Kodiak, Ipuatak, Impiutak, excuse me, and so on. And so these are the people, they don't really have a lot of this here. These are the people who created what we now call totem poles. And the First Nations, if you ever had the opportunity to go like through Washington State, British Columbia, Alaska, that whole part of the Northern Pacific that touches the Americas, you'll find still a lot of remnants of those cultures. And like in Mexico, there are still people who speak those languages, who still practice the religion. And like in other places, there is an interest in preserving the culture. I saw a film just the other day about the people on Kodiak Island, and there are like 40 people left who speak the native language, and they're trying to document this and trying to pass the language on to their children. It's really quite a remarkable project, but I want to add this, is that the kind of fierce zeal which the Europeans came into the New World, and with the zeal of converting everybody to Christianity, gave them, at least in their minds, license to destroy all things not Christian. And that was a shame. It was a tragedy. And it's not unique. These kinds of religious wars are really brutal in that respect. And so here, this is from the Mississippian cultures. This is from a mound in Ohio. And this is a pipe like you would smoke tobacco out of. And you can see it's a human figure. You put your tobacco here, light it, and so on. But these cultures in the Pacific Northwest and in Mississippian cultures they didn't really build those monuments that we see in Aztec and Inca societies. We don't see these large stone buildings and fortresses and pyramids and stuff. But what they have is mounds, our mounds. And this is, here it is, East St. Louis, Illinois, Cahokia Mound. And there's a museum here, it's a World Heritage Site. And basically, that's what they did. And underneath here, we think are in burials. We're not really sure. People don't really want to dig these up. Here's another one from the Mississippian culture, Serpent Mound in Ohio. And you can see it's like the Nazca lines. You can't really tell what this is unless you're looking from above. And so they show Illinois, Ohio. On the campus at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, on the hill by the observatory, there are effigy mounds, and we have some of these very same kind of mounds in Wisconsin. So this is kind of a cultural thing. It's still kind of a mystery why they did what they did. But I'd be happy for you to be that you know this exists. In Size Gorget with Running Warrior from Sumner County, Tennessee. And you can see, this is kind of gruesome. He's got a weapon in one hand and he's holding the head of a vanquished enemy. And you can see stylistically, this is not that so much unlike the artwork that we've seen from the Aztec cultures. The stylistic conventions of basically being flat, filling up the space, heads in profile, so on. And moving to the Southwest, we have, in these cultures, we have buildings, the Anasazi dwellings, and we have some of the pottery, and we have blankets, textiles, not so much ones that have survived over time because the climate is very severe, but we do have the traditions that have been preserved through the generations. But this is an interesting thing. Bowl with two cranes. There's a crane and there's a crane and they're connected. And geometric forms. One of the things that we find in the peoples of the American Southwest is an understanding of geometric design. Again, how many times have we seen complex geometric design? We can go all the way back into some of the cave paintings in Turkey. We can go through all of history and see how geometry has been employed as a visual art. And Ancestor Puebloan building complex. And so here, this is like I was saying, what we have, at least here, we have permanent settlements. We think that in the Mississippian cultures, probably not so permanent. Probably dwellings made of wood and other materials that would biodegrade. But out here in the Southwest, lots of stone, lots of clay, lots of building material that will withstand a harsh climate. And so this is in Mesa Verde, and this is dug into the side of a cliff. It's a cliff palace, as they say. And this is how the people lived for thousands of years. And you can see this is circa 1150, 1300. And so that's what we have. It's really not as much as we wish we had by any stretch. And so I ran out of slides. You know what that means? I have to shut up. So, until Wednesday. If there are no questions, I will see you then. It's supposed to warm up. It's a sunny day. Hopefully it'll get warmer.